Hello again, this is Desasante from the Tech Muse Academy. Welcome back to the Tech Muse podcast. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me on these weekly conversations that we have. I'm starting to get a lot of feedback, and which is always encouraged, by the way. Always love to know what you guys are interested in talking about, in learning about, or in sharing for that matter. Great place to do that, by the way, is over in the Tech Muse community. Just go to techmuseacademy.com. Right there, big and bold on the homepage, is an opportunity to join for free to the Tech Muse community, to start to involve yourself in the conversation that happens within the group, and get your opinions heard, share what you're working on, and also get your questions asked and answered as well. A lot of what happens here on the podcast is a result of the conversation that goes on inside the Tech Muse community. So techmuseacademy.com. I wanted to spend just a moment to send a shout out to all the people who've left iTunes reviews. If you watch this show on YouTube, you may not be aware that this is also an audio podcast in iTunes and Stitcher and Google Play Music. And iTunes is where most of my listeners tend to be. So I really appreciate it when I get a review in iTunes because A, it helps me to know if I'm on the right track, but also it helps to have the show rank better in the iTunes search engine. So other people who might also be interested stand a better chance of finding this show. So I really appreciate that. Just want to read one or two of those today. Someone with the username itsgunk321 left a review. Says, Des is a great teacher to anyone interested in working in the audio, mixing, producing, songwriting, creative field. I started listening to his podcast months ago and learned so much I signed up to be a part of the Tech Muse Academy. Stream, listen, learn, and be inspired. I thank you for that. Much appreciated. That was a 5-star review. And then K Havoc from the United States chimed in, left another 5-star review. Thank you. I appreciate it. And he says, he or she, I'm not sure, says, there is much more to Des than just mixing, insights, new directions of action and thought to follow, relationships between he and others to provide perspective, and a style of passing the information on that is enthusiastic, friendly, digestible, and inviting. So you know you'll be back for more. This will not solve all of your questions. It may find you... It may not find you a bride. It will not magically make you something you are not. That's what Zig Ziglar is for. What it will do, and in a way you'll be inspired by it, is give you some great places to expand your abilities and awarenesses from. I like him a bunch, as you can see, and his content is good, but it's Des that makes it even better. Thank you. I much appreciate it. I really do appreciate that comment. So thanks to everyone who's left an iTunes review. If you haven't yet done so and you want to show a little love for the show, log into your iTunes account, look for Tech Muse, and leave me an honest review. It doesn't have to be 5 stars, whatever you honestly believe the show's value is to you. So thank you once again. Okay, so today on the show, we are going to have a look at what we started a peek at last week, and that is we looked at the anatomy of a mix session last week, and where I walked you through basically how I lay out my session, how I route my tracks, and so on and so forth. So if you missed that, go back and check that out. I want to pick up from there because I did get quite a few emails saying that people wanted to dig a little deeper into this mix. The song is called "'Cause I Wanna." It's a Des and Carol tune written by Carol Channeling, who is also known as my lovely lady. And we recorded this at Chalet Studio in Claremont, Ontario, which is a beautiful residential studio. If I can find a pic, maybe I'll edit a picture in here so you can have a quick peek at it. It's a lovely, lovely studio. And the man who owns it is a fellow by the name of Dave Chester. And he is, along with myself and 3 other guys, we make up a group called the Rad Collective, which is a production team. You can learn more about that at theradcollective.com, rad with 2 Ds, RADD collective.com, if you're curious about all of that. Okay, so we got the Rad Collective, which is Dale Russell, from the former guitar player from the Guess Who. He played the electric guitars on this track. Dave Chester, who is the owner of Chalet Studios, he did the keys, the synth and organ and piano bits. I played acoustic guitar and backup vocals. Carol did the singing, the lead vocals, and some harmonies as well. We had Rob Laidlaw, former bass player for Platinum Blonde, also played with Kim Mitchell. We had him on the bottom end, laying it down for us. And of course, we had Aubrey Dale on the drums. Fantastic drummer, played with John Popper, Vernon Reed. So some pretty good heavy hitters we had in the studio. It was a really fortunate experience, and we're super glad for it. And then I took it all home and mixed it. Okay, so let's dive into this mix and just get a little insight into what's going on to make it sound the way it does. I'm just going to hit play for a little bit so you can hear a little bit of what we got going on here. right, so that gives you a little taste of what the tune is all about. Let's dive in and have a look at some of the things that are going on here. So again, we looked last week at the routing and everything, so I won't bother going into any of that. Feel free to just pause this, go back and check out last week's video, and you can have a look at the lay of the land. So let's dig into the drums. If we, I'm going to solo the drum folder here, so we're dealing with just the drums. Okay, so we got sort of a shuffle thing going on. Aubrey used Talawans on this piece. In fact, it was when we first started tracking this, we started with the acoustic and a scratch vocal, and then Aubrey was the first player to lay down his tracks. And so the tune actually had a much more acoustic sort of feel at that time, hence the choice of the Talawans, the bundle sticks, on the drum kit. In retrospect, he kind of wishes he had played with proper drumsticks, but you know what? In the end, it all turned out really, really good. But that did influence some of my mixing decisions. I did try to fatten up the snare a little bit. You'll notice in the individual drum tracks themselves, I have almost nothing going on because I decided to work at the group level. This is a track hierarchy concept that I talk about quite frequently. So if we look at the groups, we've got the all drums group here, which is broken down into overheads, kick, snare, toms, and room mics, and everything else is sent right to the all drums bus. Okay, so again, let's start by listening to the kick drum. So I've got a little EQ rolling off a bit of bottom end. I had a tiny bit of 20 hertz high pass filter to cut the lows. The bass guitar was going to be, in this mix, the predominant bottom end force. You'll notice if you've watched some of my mix case studies in the past that I am a huge fan of the CLA plugins from Waves. So I use the Start Me Up, the basic Start Me Up preset for kick drum. That's oftentimes all I do. I oftentimes don't even do a whole lot of tweaking. The plugin just has a real... it's just very good at giving you a starting point to work from. So let's hear the kick drum without the plugins. If I get rid of the EQ as well. So that's what we started with. So first thing I'll do is I'll bring in CLA. I'm actually going to make a small adjustment there. Take out some of the sub lows and replace it with the way this plugin is set up is you got your bass and then you can choose between subs, lower, and upper. And I've just decided to make a slight change. It's not a very huge difference, but you can hear it if you've got a decent monitoring setup. Some of that really low sub, which I want the bass player Rob's part to handle. I just got rid of a little bit of that. Okay, so that's with the CLA. Second thing I did is added in a 1176 compressor. Let's bring that in. And again, that pushes the kick forward a little bit. It's got a very high ratio, sort of mid-range attack and a slightly slower release. Here's without. And with. Bring that in with the rest of the drum kit. Bypass all the plugins. Put it back in. And that's your kick drum. I didn't do much on these tracks. On the overheads, I just got the CLA plugin with the overheads Start Me Up preset. Let's have a listen to that. Without. And with. Okay, so very simple there. If we look at the snare, I've got, once again, CLA drums, snare, Start Me Up. which is over here. Now, again, the snare was sounding a little weak because of the fact that it was being played with the lighter bundle sticks, and so I wanted to big it up a little bit. So I used the, I bumped a little bit of the low frequencies up in the CLA plugin here, and I also added the Universal Audio Voice of God, which is a fantastic little plugin for accentuating low end or low mid frequencies to give a little presence and girth to a track. So So let's bypass these and have a listen. So that's the original snare. We add in CLA. And then we add in the voice of God, which thickens it up a little bit. And then I sent the whole thing to my room reverb. And that's our final result. Okay, that is the snare. On the toms, same deal. CLA toms, start me up preset, unchanged, unaffected. And then I've got our bass to add a little bit of bottom end sort of subharmonic content to fatten them up a little bit. And then I've got a compressor to hold it all together. And that's, again, my 1176, one of my favorites from Universal Audio. So let's bypass the inserts and see if we can find some spot where there is toms. Let's see. Let's open up the drums here so we can find some toms. There's a bit of tom action right there. Okay, I'm going to bypass the EQ as well. This is the original. Okay, a bit of EQ rolls out a little bit of that bottom. Right in here at around 200 hertz and sloping down. And then I add in the CLA drums. Big difference. Add in the R bass. Nice and fat. Add in the compression. Once again with nothing. With the plugins. And I do have a bit of a gate going on here as well. Just to get some of the unwanted extra noise out of the toms. And that's what we got going on the toms. Room, just the CLA room preset untouched. Let's have a listen to that. That's without the plugin. And with the plugin. Adds a little presence with the reverb and compression, and just gives a nice off the mic sound. And I did nothing more with the room mics. And that is pretty much the drum kit. Then on the all drums bus, I've got some compression and a little bit of saturation. Let's have a listen. That's without the plugins. Add in the 1176 compressor. And then we got the little radiator from Sound Toys. If we bring that in. Puts a little of that analog grit around the edges and fattens it up a tiny bit. And again, that was also a decision in light of the fact that the drum performance was fairly lightweight in the beginning of the production of this song. The song ended up evolving into something a little bit more rockin', so I wanted to try to accentuate that as well. So if we move along to the bass, on the bass guitar, I've got, once again, the CLA Start Me Up preset and a little bit of compression, and that's it. Let's have a listen without. I'm going to bypass the EQ too. Okay, so let's bring in the CLA. Boom. Let's bring in the compressor. And let's bring in the EQ to tame it a little. And that is the bass. The guitar tracks were divvied into electric guitar 1, electric guitar 2, and then all guitars, which includes those as well as the acoustic guitar, okay? So on the all guitars bus, I just have some compression. Let's listen to the guitars. Without the compressor, a little unruly. With the compressor, tamed a little, okay? If we look at electric guitar the electric guitars bus, which includes both electric 1 and electric 2, just a little compression. That's without it. And that's with it. So very subtle, just sort of reining it in a little bit. Look at electric guitar 1. I've got CLA guitars. Again, I love the CLA plugins as a point of departure. I put it on, turn it, like just close the interface and continue from there, oftentimes not even touching anything. So I'm using the chubby preset. Let's hear it with and without. So let me bypass these inserts. Bring in CLA. Fattens it right up. Bring in my compressor. And then I use the voice of God again to add a little girth. Again, no plugins, and with the plugins. Now I've also had a little bit of an EQ bump there at 221 hertz, just to bring out a part of the tone that I thought was allowing it to cut through a little bit better, and a little bit of plate reverb from the UAD EMT 140. Take that away. And then with. And you'll notice there was actually a little bit of clipping in this Guitar Tracks recording that happened at the studio. It was inadvertent, but unfortunately, you know, it is what it is. So in the mix, though, it turns out okay. If we look at, let's see, guitar number 2, very similar treatments, a touch of the same reverb, little bump at 2.3K, 4 dB bump there, fairly wide Q. And then again, I've got my CLA guitars set up, and I've got a little bit of compression. So let's have a listen without the effects. Bring in CLA. Gives it presence right away. Bring in my compressor. Brings it a little forward. Take away the reverb. Now it's too forward. I wanted to push it back a little bit. Bring in the reverb. And there you have it. If I bypass the EQ, that's what you get. And I bring it back in. And there you have it. That is the second electric guitar, and that's pretty much the guitars with the exception of the acoustic. Let's have a look at that, because that didn't actually get a bus of its own. If we look at that, again, CLA guitars, a little bit of our Renaissance bass from Waves to add some low-end information in a way that's different than an EQ can do, and it's very difficult to explain. But if you get the demo of that plugin, it's very cool. A little bit of compression, a little bit of room reverb. So let's have a listen to the acoustic. Bypass the effects. That's what we started with. Let's bring in CLA. Oh yes, I'm not using this plugin, that's right. Bring in the R bass. And a little compression. You can hear it smooths it off dynamically. Okay, so it's pushed pretty heavy. It's pretty squashed, and it gives it that pressure that I wanted it to have in this mix. And that is basically the guitars. If we look at the keys, let's see what we got in keys. Actually, we'll go up to the groups where I did the work. We had an organ, There's a synth, and towards the end of the tune there's a piano. If we look at the organ, just a little compression. That's it. Mid-range attack, slightly slower release, 8-to-1 ratio. Let's go back a notch. That's without the compressor and with the compressor. So very subtle, not much going on the organ. And there's where the synth comes in. So if we look at the synth, same thing, just a bit of compression. 8-to-1 ratio, quite a bit of gain reduction. Here's without. And with. And there's that piano part. Let's have a look at that. Same deal, just a bit of compression. You can see it here. Getting about 5 dB of gain reduction. And there you have it. So last but not least, we've got the vocals. And I've got an all vocals bus here. Let's have a look at that. Just a little bit of compression on the all vocals bus. Let's solo the vocals here.
Give me water, give me breath.
Getting a couple dB of gain reduction.
If I give you a pound of flesh, will you forgive my trespasses? Give me water, give
background
me
vocals,
breath,
same thing. Couple dB of gain reduction.
Give me flesh, give me wine, these guilty pleasures.
Then there's my background vocals, which actually have nothing on them. Let's find the spot where they come in. Oh, so looks like I have those routed a little incorrectly. But that's okay. There's a little oversight. Let's see if we listen to the Carol background vocals.
Oh, I do it 'cause I want to. Oh, I do.
Yeah, it looks like I got those routed wrong. Let's take a look at that. Go into my vocals. My vocals. BG Vocals. Haha, there we go. BG Dez. We all make mistakes. And one of the reasons why I didn't notice that that error is because I didn't actually do anything at that level. You'll notice if I bring up the strip for that, there's nothing actually happening, so it shouldn't make any difference. I just like to be thorough.
Do it 'cause I want to.
But now we can hear just my vocals.
I do it 'cause I want to. Oh, I do it 'cause I want to.
Okay, and then the Carol ones.
Oh, I do it 'cause I want to.
Okay, and that's all being sent to the background vocals bus, which is where the reverb and the LA2A compression is happening.
If I give you a pound, do it 'cause
So getting a few dB of gain reduction
I want to. Oh, I do
and some plate reverb. And if we take away that compressor and the reverb,
it 'cause I want
bring in the compressor,
to. Oh, I do it
bring in the reverb,
'cause I want to.
and that is the background vocals. And then if we look at the lead vocal, there's the all vocals bus, which is just the same, a little room reverb and a little compression. And if we solo that out,
Because I wanna give me water, give me breath, forgive me for the things I said. If I give you a pound of flesh.
Okay, and without the reverb.
Will you forgive my trespasses? Give me water, give me bread, forgive me for.
So that's just a short tail reverb, just adds a little presence and a little bit bigger for the vocals. And that is the vocals. If we look at the lead vocal, which I did edit at the track and not at a bus, so that's the actual lead vocal track itself. You'll notice we've got a de-esser to get rid of some of the sibilants. We've got LA2A, which is my favorite compressor on a vocal. For whatever reason, it just always responds the way I want it to. And I've also got the vocal writer from Waves doing a bit of automation for me and keeping the vocal sort of like a bobber on the water floating above the mix. And then I've got a little bit of reverb, room reverb, plate reverb, and some delay. So let's solo that up and take everything out and see what we started with here.
All the things I said, give me flesh, give me wine, these guilty
So we're bringing the
pleasures
de-esser.
are friends of mine, because I wanna. Give me water, give me bread, forgive me for the things I said. If I give you my pound of flesh, will you forgive my trespasses? Give me water.
And it's just catching the bad sibilants. In fact, it's leaving most of it alone and just dipping in once in a while when there's something really sibilant. And then we have our LA2A compressor. Let's bring that in.
Bread, forgive me for the things I said.
Hitting it pretty heavy.
Give me flesh, give me wine. These guilty pleasures are all friends of mine. Give me
bring in
water,
the vocal rider.
give me bread, forgive me for the things I said. If I give you my pound of flesh.
And you hear like when she said, when I give you my, that you my is all of a sudden right up close because the vocal rider is pushing it up. When she gets quiet, pulling it back when she gets loud, much like you would do manually with automation. But this does it in a very cool automated fashion. So I really like that plugin a lot. And then if we bring in our ambiences.
Give me water, give me bread, forgive me for the things I said.
That's the room reverb. We bring in the delay.
If I give you my pound of flesh, will you forgive my
And the plate.
trespasses? Give me water, give me bread, forgive me for the things I said. Give me flesh, give me wine, these guilty pleasures are all friends of mine. Because I want.
And that is pretty much the mix as far as the instruments are concerned. The effects channels themselves, my room reverb is Reverence. It's just got some high pass filtering up to 1 and a bit kilohertz. And that is the standard stock Cubase convolution reverb using an impulse response from the Bricasti M5. If you Google around, you'll find an impulse response library from the Bricasti, which is awesome because I don't have $5,000 for a Bricasti hardware unit, so I get to use the next closest thing, I suppose. And then I've got my Waves H delay. Again, it's just got some high pass filtering at 300 hertz on the channel, I like this delay because it's got a little bit of an analog flair to it. And then we've got the UAD plate reverb, which is my favorite plate. That's the EMT 140. And again, that channel just has a little bit of 300 hertz roll off with a high pass filter on the effects channel itself. And that's about it. That is more or less what's happening in this mix. Down below here are all my backup tracks that are muted at the event level. They're not being used. They were just extra things from other takes and so forth from the session. And that is 'Cause I Wanna, as far as my mix is concerned. So I hope you found some use for that, and check out the Waves CLA plugins. As you can tell, it's fairly obvious that I love them as a point of departure, a place to start with. So grab the demos and check them out because that might be something worth looking into. I have no affiliation with Waves. I don't get no commission if you go and buy them. I just really like them, and I think they do a good job in a lot of situations of just sort of getting you from the recorded audio, bridging a gap, and getting you halfway along the path to getting that track sort of dialed in. So they're a huge time saver, and I really like them a lot. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. Leave comments below this, wherever it is you're finding this. If you're listening in iTunes, please, like I mentioned, log into your iTunes account and leave me a star rating and a review. Really, really appreciate it. And until next time, I will see you. Keep making music. I'm going to play the track out, and we'll see you next week.